The IFT rule of 2 IFTs per month was implemented a couple of years ago. So that means you can elect 2 IFTs per month in any direction you want to go. And then you're essentially done for that month. And this example shows a person moving out of the I fund into the G fund. That's interfund transfer number 1. No matter what they do, that's their first interfund transfer. And then they move money out of the G fund into these stock funds, the CS&I fund here. That's their interfund transfer number 2 for that month. This person is essentially done for the month. They cannot elect any more IFTs unless they elect a movement back towards the G fund, but only in that direction, towards the G fund. So they could continue to move money towards the G fund after that second IFT, and then the next month, of course, the cycle starts over again. So 2 IFTs per month in any direction you want to go, and then there's that safe haven rule, basically. You can get out of the stock funds and towards the G fund only. So that kicks in again each month. Any questions, anything? Okay, now the funds that you can invest in, none of this is going to change, and this will stay. This will be the same, like I said, for your Roth elections that you make. Like I said, the money will flow the same way, so you're utilizing the same 10 potential funds. You have 5 individual funds and 5 life cycle funds. The 5 individual funds are the GF, CS&I, government securities. You have a bond fund in that F fund, and then you have 3 stock funds. The C fund is tracking the S&P 500. That's the 500 large companies in the United States stock market. The S fund is actually tracking the Dow Jones U.S. Completion Total Stock Market Index. It's a completion index. It completes the rest of the U.S. stock market, basically, outside of the 500 S&P 500 companies. That's what you're tracking in that index there. And then the I fund is that international fund that's tracking 22 different markets around the world outside of the U.S. These are companies located outside of the U.S., mostly Japan, UK, but including all those European countries right now that are having issues right now. Well, that's a direct correlation to the success of the I fund. If you notice, if you look, we have a fact sheet on the table outside if you want to look at that, or on our website. It's no secret that the I fund has been losing a little money lately, but that's a direct correlation to what those markets are doing and the unrest and all that kind of stuff as to what's going on with those, because that's what you're tracking. You're also dealing with currency risk in the I fund. The value of the U.S. dollar, of course, is going to affect what this I fund does. So you'll notice if you start out the G fund, that's your safe, secure fund. You can't lose money in that. That's essentially our bank account at Treasury. That's where all the money flows in and out of at Treasury. That's backed by the U.S. government. The G fund is solely for TSP participants in that G fund. The F fund, like I said, is tracking, replicating what the bond market is doing in the U.S., specifically the Barclays U.S. Aggregate Bond Index. Asset-backed securities, government securities, all triple B and above type bonds here that they're tracking there. So interest rate risk is an issue with that bond market. Interest rates have been very low lately. If you'll notice on that same fact sheet, the F fund's been doing better these days, obviously, because interest rates are low. The bond market usually works in inverse relation to that. The L funds, this is one of the fact sheets that I was talking about that shows you all the last 12 months rates of return and then the last 5 years annually. This is on that table outside there. Plenty of copies of those if you want that. It's also on the website. We update that every day and every month and so forth. Now, one other thing you have to consider when you're making your contributions, and to the point that this gentleman made about transferring money into TSP, is, well, wherever your money goes, you got to pay somebody something to administer that plan, don't you? Well, you have to pay. I'd love to work for free. I love my country, but I need to eat sometimes. So, so I have to get paid. So our expense ratio is a key factor in many people moving money into TSP from those outside sources. We do things pretty cheaply. Our expense ratio, actually you can update this one, for last year, for 2011, stayed exactly the same at 0.025%, meaning it cost you 25 cents per every $1,000 you had in this plan last year for us to administer and run the plan. That's it. There are no other fees. The only other fee that you may incur would be this $50 loan fee. If you never take out a loan, you never incur that fee. That's it. That's our total expense. A lot of people aren't aware of the fact that we don't get any appropriated funds from Congress to run this plan. Not a single penny. Your plan pays for itself. That's why Roth was a big issue for us, because we had to spend some money to implement that. So we kind of studied it for a little bit. Once Congress finally passed the law and allowed us to go ahead and create it, we actually studied it prior to that for a while, decided whether folks wanted it, and then we implement something like that, or we ask Congress to allow for that. Because we have to spend participant money for those types of things. That's your expense ratio. Anytime we spend any money, my salary, the lights in my office, every bit comes out of this plan itself to run the plan. So it's a big issue. A lot of times we get people say, well, you know, Fidelity's been doing this, or Vanguard's been doing that, and they do this overnight like that. Well, yeah, that's because they can write a check basically and implement something. When we write that check, it's your money and my money. I'm a participant too. Everybody at the board is a participant. We're all federal employees. So that's one of the things you have to consider with this. Or at least that's what the way I look at it. Our expense ratios are very, very low. You're not going to find this in the private sector. We do things. Go ahead.
What is the difference? What is private sector?
Well, then this shows you the expenses for 2009. It still shows you. It's basically the same for last year, for 2010 or so. It's roughly about 0.72%, or $7.20 per $1,000. That doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it is if you add it up on a $10,000 account, $100,000 account, $1 million account, whatever. Yes, sir.
The question I have is, you use the word net. Is there something that's not said or untold?
Well, the net expense ratio is what's included in our expense ratio includes like things like forfeitures and things like that. Those folks who don't meet the 3-year requirement for the vesting for the 1% expense or the 1% automatic agency money for FERS, when they don't meet that, that money gets forfeited to the plan. There are management fees for BlackRock Institutional Trust Company, who manages the funds outside of the G Fund. By law, we cannot manage the G Fund. We have to pay a private sector company to manage those funds by law, and that's BlackRock Institutional Trust Company right now. So this is the whole expense ratio of the plan itself. So it's just one of the things you want to keep in mind when you're considering, oftentimes we get folks that are like, I'm retiring next year. I'm going to move all my money out. I'm going to take it all out. I got this great deal from so-and-so out here that's offered me this and that. Well, that's fine, and it might be a great deal. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying find out what their expense ratios are. Find out what their fees might be and those sorts of things. These are all the factors that play into the cost and eating up your account from time to time. Those expense ratios, inflation, and so forth. All of those things eat up accounts like this, 401ks. Trust me, it's not uncommon for experts out in the field to say an expense ratio of 1%, 1.5%, 2% or higher is normal. Not normal to me. Most folks are doing the smart thing. They're leaving it here. They're taking it out as they should. Some folks make the mistake of getting a little too anxious, like I said, and transferring immediately. That's the big misconception about withdrawal rules. When do I have to take the money out? When I separate from service. A lot of people think they have to take it out immediately. We oftentimes come across folks out there that are like, my tax advisor told me I have to take it out within 60 days. I have to. Well, that's just simply not true. You don't have to touch your TSP account when you're separated until you're 70 and a half. 70 and a half is the first distribution period for a separated employee, and that's when IRS says you have to start to draw down and take out that minimum distribution amount. Each year you get money from an account like this, from a plan like this, and that's 70 and a half. So you have a distribution period for that year and each year afterwards. What we require also is that you have to have a full withdrawal election form submitted to us by April 1st of the following year, because that's what the law requires. You have to submit withdrawal elections by that point. That's for separated employees, mind you. If you're not separated, then that doesn't occur. You don't have to touch this money until you are separated at any age. And we do have federal employees that work past that. And
This is happening today. People are working till they're older.
Yes.
So what if you're 70 and a half, you're still a federal employee, and you did TSP? So you have to start taking it out
no, you don't.
because you're still a federal employee and not
As
separate?
long as you're still an active employee,
Okay.
you do not have to touch this money at any age. 70 and a half, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, doesn't matter. We have federal employees in their 90s, we certainly do.